the headline of the weekend is Ja Morant has learned nothing. Suspended indefinitely by the Memphis Grizzlies, and we await another investigation of the NBA as he is on Instagram Live seen holding a gun, flashing it in a car, not his account, but again, here is Ja Morant with video surfacing doing exactly what got him suspended 2 months earlier. Suspended in March, where he then has sit-down interviews, pretending to be contrite, saying that he's going to get situations in his life worked out off the court because he's one of the best on it, and has everything to lose, not just being one of the top players in the NBA. He signed an exclusive deal as an individual player with Nike. He's got his own shoe. He had Powerade for the first time in, 5 years. Signed an endorsement deal with any athlete whatsoever. Powerade through Coca-Cola has paused that, and that was ready to launch about a week after his suspension happened in March. And he also met with the commissioner and Adam Silver in New York after going away for a couple of days for therapy in Florida. He's up in New York meeting with Adam Silver, where Silver's releasing statements saying he knows exactly where we stand on this. He knows our policies. And while we couldn't prove he had a weapon and brought a weapon to Denver, he was seen on surveillance footage at a strip club with a gun. And he gets suspended 8 games. And if they could have proven without a doubt that he was on the team plane with it or at a hotel with it or on the team bus with it, he would have been suspended for the minimum of, 50 based on the CBA. 2 months later, this happens again. And now we head into the offseason where it's uncertain what's going to happen with Ja Morant. But we do know, Chad, this is pure stupidity on his end.
Pure stupidity, and you can't trust him. I mean, we knew that when all the other incidents were piling up. And now, the one thing, I mean, there's a lot of things you can't do if you're Ja Morant based on the string of incidents.
Right.
This is not just flashing a gun at a strip club in Denver. What led to that was reports of the NBA investigating you and your crew with a gun with a laser pointer focused on an NBA team's bus as they left Memphis. This comes after reports of you and your crew going to a mall and threatening some Foot Locker manager with a gun and threatening to beat him up in the parking lot and approaching him. This comes after you got into a physical altercation with a high school kid at your house during a pickup basketball game, and the threat of violence was there as well. There are a lot of false equivalencies being made here, and this is the top one I've seen since this story came out. Well, what about the Second Amendment? It's not illegal to show a gun in a video. It's not illegal. No one's asking for the guy to be arrested. But I guarantee you his employer, the Memphis Grizzlies in the NBA, decided after the last incident, which was number 3 or 4 on the list, that he was going to have to adhere to a certain code of conduct moving forward in order to not be suspended for a lengthy amount of time. And make no mistake about it, he's about to be suspended for a lengthy amount of time. People want to point to Andy Ogles and say, well, it's okay if it's a white U.S. representative from Tennessee that flashes a gun in a photo, but not this black kid that plays in the NBA. Well, Andy Ogles looks stupid too when he poses with AR-15s with his entire family under a Christmas tree. I think that's dumb. Both things can be true. We can talk about both. They both look stupid. The difference here, though, is Andy Ogles does not have a history of threatening people with guns. He doesn't have a video of himself at a strip club with the AR-15 in tow. That's the difference between him and Ja Morant. It's not that they're black and white. That's not it. This is not a racism thing. This is an intelligence thing. Ja Morant does not appear to have any. He is a kid from a middle-class home that was not some gangbanger growing up that decided to get famous and get a lot of money, and for whatever reason, he wants to be a gangbanger now. And I do not understand it. And I guarantee you, when Michael Wilbon is going on television and saying, I'm not going to allow my kid to wear Ja Morant shoes, there are going to be other sponsors that follow the lead on this. And Ja Morant, you could go back and replay what Hutton and I said about this initially when the whole Pacers thing was going on. Ja Morant must pick his friends better. He must distance himself from friends and family. Maybe, just maybe, Ja Morant didn't know he was on Instagram Live. It's possible. He could have thought they were taking a selfie of themselves in the car. Does not matter. The stupidity must stop. Point being here, Hutton, I'm not letting him out and giving excuses for him. He's got to be better, and he's got to get better people around him.
Well, I've said that far too often throughout this string of incidents, it has been about the people around him. And whenever the suspension took place, I said, when he comes back, now it's on Ja Morant. And the Memphis Grizzlies took swift action and released the statement saying they've suspended him indefinitely. And everything upon his return would be pending league review and that they would have no further comment at this time. The league has said this too, but again, remember, the league and Adam Silver met with him in March, face-to-face, at league offices, and they suspended him for 8 games at the time due to conduct detrimental to the league. And while the league's release said it did not conclude that the gun at issue belonged to Morant, talking about the Denver issue, it was brought to him into the nightclub or was displayed by him for beyond a brief period, and that's all they could confirm. But the full statement from Adam Silver points to what could be a big-time suspension. And I'm thinking, Chad, along the lines of what we see whenever a player in the NFL right now is caught sports betting. They're suspended indefinitely, and it's at least a year. There has to be consequences for actions instead of slaps on the wrist, which they have done along the way. And here was the quote from Adam Silver at the time, right after the meeting when they handed down the suspension. Ja's conduct was irresponsible, reckless, and potentially very dangerous. It also has serious consequences given his enormous following and influence, particularly among young fans who look up to him. He's expressed sincere contrition and remorse for his behavior. Ja's also made it clear to me that he has learned from this incident and that he understands his obligations and responsibility to the Memphis Grizzlies and the broader NBA community extend well beyond his play on the court. That is from the commissioner of the league. Here was Ja Morant with Jalen Rose after this was all laid out by Commissioner Silver.
You were at the spot, Shotgun Willie's. You were holding a gun, and we both know how dangerous that can be. Whose gun were you holding?
Well, the gun wasn't mine. It's not who I am. I don't condone any type of violence, but I take full responsibility for my actions. Made a bad mistake, and I can see the image that I painted over myself with my recent mistakes. But in the future, I'm gonna show everybody who Ja really is, what I'm about, and change this narrative.
The suspension came down March 20th. That was shortly after. And he says he's going to show everyone who Ja really is. And now we see this on Instagram Live over the weekend as we sit here in the middle of May, not even 2 months earlier.
Didn't he go to therapy or something for less than a week?
Yeah, it was just a couple of days.
I didn't.
Yeah, counseling.
I almost felt a little bit bad about it at the time when I said it. I didn't believe him then in this apology and interview with Jalen Rose. Certainly don't believe him now. Well, you can just hear the way he's saying it. It's as if a lawyer said, here are the main talking points. Was not your gun. No excuses, though. This is not who I am. Hit those points over and over. Mm-hmm. He does not sound like a man who believes what he's saying. He doesn't sound like a man who had the idea that basketball may be taken from him and all the wealth and fame that comes with it may go away from this. He did not get that fear in this whole story. Hutton, I think he's going to have it now because I think this is a year suspension at least that he should face after all of this. I really think they're going to throw the book at him, the NBA will, and the Grizzlies.
And he signed a massive contract with Memphis, and then these string of incidents take place. And he's in year 4. He's just wrapping up year 4. Make no mistake, he's one of the most talented players in the NBA. He is a brand. The brands are behind him. The signature shoe, the Powerade commercials that were already shot, the marketing campaign that was set to be released. There are other sponsors as well. But the way it was treated 2 months ago was as if he was just diagnosed with a terminal illness and had to go do something out of state.
Healthy.
And we will comment on it later, and we're with him. It was not the way that the league or the team has responded now. Now, I will say, like they changed policies in order to protect him from himself, from the people around him, and that really all changed around the Pacers incident, Chad. That's where the talk started, but then there was the snowball effect, and within a month and a half, all of a sudden, they weren't staying over an extra day in certain cities as other teams would. If you go to L.A. and you've got a day in between games, you stay the night in L.A. for the most part, and then you fly out to Salt Lake. Instead of going to Salt Lake early, the players want to stay in Los Angeles. That makes sense. In certain cities, the Grizzlies said, we're just not going to do that. We're not going to put our group in that situation. Part necessity and part protection of the player from himself, which he clearly can't do on his own. And that's the sad reality of this, is he hasn't learned anything, and now it's on him, and everything's right there laid out in front of him, and he's still hanging out and doing the same exact things yet again.
When we talk to our Memphis guest later, I want to ask him about the Grizzlies organization and if they've done enough with all of this, because I don't think that they have. When you're having to have team meetings after this happens about conduct on the road, then that is an organization that's not all that professional with their team. And that's what the Grizzlies organization strikes me as from a team culture, locker room perspective. So we'll talk to them about that. But Ja Morant, and I want to ask Dan Dockich about his impact on winning for the Grizzlies. I think he's very talented, and he's a superstar with some of his highlights. They didn't take a huge step back when he wasn't there late in the season.
Well, not this year, but he was, number 4 in the NBA MVP voting a year ago.
Yeah,
I mean, he was sensational.
But there are guys that are superstars. Carmelo Anthony's one I'd put in that, who I think won a league MVP or always finished close to it. Didn't impact winning all that much. When you took them away, sometimes the team was about the same. I'm not saying the Grizzlies got better.
Joel Embiid, Sixers won game 1 of that series without him.
There are guys. Now take Jokic, for example, off the Nuggets, and what happens? I think he impacts winning in more ways because of the assist and all the other ways he impacts the game and how they run the offense through him.
But he's their franchise. Morant is their franchise.
I would agree with that. We'll talk to Dan, though, from a basketball sensibility part of it, just how much he does that. One other quick thing on guns, because this is a hot-button issue right now, okay? Because everyone is immediately the quick knee-jerk reaction I talked about to say, well, why is this okay and not this? Once people understand the full Ja Morant story, they do a pretty good job of saying, oh, now I see why he's an idiot. Yeah, that's bad. When you look at everything else that went into this, it's not just that one video. And I'm a believer in the Second Amendment. I'm a believer in the right to own guns, all those things. The gun owners that I knew growing up, that I know now, are very, very respectful of guns. You don't bring them out. If you get an invite to someone's gun cabinet that's locked up or locker and they show you something, the gun owners I know are very respectful of those weapons. There is a lack of respect of weapons like this. We're seeing it with Ja Morant, how for whatever reason, when that camera comes on, he's got to go get the guns. His props are live weapons. That's what he's got to go get to show in the video. It's disrespectful to the weapon and sets an awful precedent. I mentioned Andy Ogles earlier. Same thing. I think when you got little children sitting around with AR-15s in the air on Christmas morning, that sets a dangerous precedent. I do not understand the need to go immediately to social media and pose for pictures with the weapons. And Ja Morant is a byproduct of all of this and that culture. Now, he's an idiot. I'm not condoning it for that reason. But we got to get away from this whole thing, that it's just cool to, rap to song lyrics and then hold a gun in a video. It's stupid.
Well, and he's, allegedly made threats about, come face the barrel and other tweets, which was part of the string of all these incidents. And again, it's all leading up to what we saw over the weekend. Kwame Brown, number 1 overall pick in 2001, went off on Ja Morant, turned the video on, and he's been known to rant. And he lit into Morant over the weekend. Full stories at OutKick.com. Tore into him over the culture of figuring out and learning, hey, you don't always have to pull out the gun when the rap song's on and flash weapons to act street. Kwame Brown's words, and we could play it, but we'd have to bleep out half the audio right now. Again, available at OutKick.com. But lit into him. Stephen A. Smith, among others, lighting him up over this. Because, again, it is a trend and a pattern and not a one-off incident. Even Sauce Gardner, who's sitting courtside with Aaron Rodgers, and he's responding on social media as the starting corner, current defensive NFL Rookie of the Year. Everybody has guns, bro. No need to post it on Instagram Live, LOL. He since deleted this tweet, but his initial response was, Morant did it again? And it's May 14th, it's May 13th when this is going down, and Ja Morant did it again? Didn't we just watch the apology video with Jalen Rose setting him up for the PR answer that was memorized? Everybody knows how stupid this looks. It's not a political issue as much as it is just a stupidity and a sad string of events that leads me to think that this guy has no clue who's really around him and who's representing him at all times. No, it wasn't his Instagram account. But he's behind the wheel, and he's hanging out with someone that's going on Instagram Live less than 2 months after he was just suspended from the league and had to go meet with the commissioner about it for doing the same thing.
It's dumb. It's so stupid. And it's hard for me to grasp the level of stupidity to do the exact same thing that just had that carrot of basketball and your future in basketball taken away from you for a bit, and then you go and do the exact same thing. It is so incredibly dumb.
So now the question comes, did it happen this quickly again because the suspension was so light to begin with, because it was just a slap on the wrist? Or is there more to it now? And if the NBA comes down with a harsh suspension, what message does that send? How does that help Ja Morant? And what precedent is the league trying to set? Because this is also the same league that changed their dress code.
Based off Malice in the Palace.
No doubt.